Welcome back. Today we get to start doing the area of composite figures. We've done a lot of this in Bellwork, and really this is just finding the area of the other shapes, but we have to add them together because it's two shapes, okay? So let's define a composite figure. A figure made up of multiple 2D shapes, okay? So it can be divided into more than one basic shape. So notice that a shape is different than a figure. A shape is the common things that you already know. Triangles, rectangles, squares, shapes that are common. Figures are not common shapes. Like this is not a well-known shape. This is a weird shape. It is not a shape, so it's called a figure. If it's not a common known shape, then it's called a figure instead. Okay? So let's just jump right in. Look at this. It's making a T right here, and there's no formula to find the area of this random figure. So what we've got to do is we've got to divide it into more than one basic shape. So that's step number one. Separate the composite figure into smaller shapes. Okay, now there is a lot of different ways you could separate this. Okay, maybe you, right off the bat, see that you could separate it here. Well, not even right there. You could separate it here and make a square here and a square here, and then you have this long rectangle right here. Okay, and we know how to find the area of squares and rectangles, so we could do it that way. You could separate into a bunch of different squares. A square there, a square there, a square here, a square here, and then a rectangle. But that's kind of making it more complicated than you need to, right? Why would you separate it into more shapes than you need to? I think the way that I saw right off the bat that would be the easiest is to separate it into two rectangles, right? So I'm going to make one of my rectangles pink and one of my rectangles green. Okay, so that's step number one. Split it up into two shapes that you already know how to find the area of. So look for areas you already know how to find. Then go ahead and find the area of those shapes. And the last step we'll do is we'll add them together. Okay, so if I'm looking at this green rectangle first I'm going to write the formula. So the area of a rectangle, if you remember, is length times width. My length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and my width is 2. So I've got 6 times 2, which equals 12. Okay, then I do the pink one. So I've got the pink rectangle, same formula. Area equals length times width. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 2, which equals 10. And then my last step is to add those two together. So I've got 12 plus 10, so my area equals 22 units squared. Okay, so that one was a pretty easy one because it was just working with rectangles. But remember, when you have composite figures, you can split them up into any shapes you can see. So looking at this next one, I see that I could cut it right in half, right? And that would be a trapezoid because this side is parallel to this side. So I could split it right in half and then times it by 2. I could make a triangle right here and a rectangle right here and do the same thing on the other side. However, I would always go with the one that looks the easiest. And to me, the one that looks the easiest is if you split it right here, right? Because that's going to just give you two shapes, a triangle and a rectangle, and we know how to find the area of both of those shapes. So There's my triangle, and my rectangle is this way. Can you do it a different way? Absolutely. Okay, I am totally fine with you splitting it a different way. I'm just going to do the one that looks the most obvious to me so this video isn't forever long, okay? So, let's do pink first. The triangle, remember the area of the triangle is half of the base times the height. So the base is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And remember, my height has to have a right angle. So that's going to be right here. I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4. My height is 4. So, half of 8 times 4. Half of 8 is 4, and 4 times 4 equals 16. Okay, so that's the area of my triangle. Now we're going to do the rectangle, which is just length times width. My length is the same as this. So 8, same as the base of the triangle, and my height is 2, and 8 times 2 equals 16. So if I add 16 plus 16, that's going to give me 32 units squared. Okay, moving on to the next one. I see some different shapes you could make here. You could make 2 small triangles, a rectangle, and a triangle. You could make a few different squares in there, but the most obvious one to me, and the easiest because you only have to do 2, would be to split that into just the triangle and the Okay, so we've got triangle and trapezoid. The triangle is base this is my height. 1, 2, 3, 4. Half of 4 times 4. Half of 4 is 2. 2 times 4 is 8. So my triangle is 8 units squared. And then my trapezoid is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for my base. And for my height, it is 1, 2, 3. Okay, do you remember the formula for the area of a trapezoid? It is the height times base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. So, the height is 3. Oh, base 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 plus 8, and then we're going to divide that by 2. So always start in the grouping symbols. 4 plus 8 is 12. 12 times 3 is 36, and 36 divided by 2 is 18. You also could have done 12 divided by 2 times. You could call. Okay, so I did the separating, got the areas of both of them, now I just need to add them together. So I've got 8 plus 18, which is 20. Timeout, did I do that wrong? $18, 26 units squared. You guys will have to correct me in class if I'm wrong because it doesn't agree with my other paper. Okay, moving on. Correct me if I'm wrong in class, guys. Okay, this last one we're not actually going to solve. I'm not going to have you find the areas of this composite figure. I just want you to see how many different ways you could solve this. What different smaller shapes could you split this up into? And I'm going to have you share with me in class, okay? So see how many different ways you can split that up. And if you want to find the area for fun, go for it. Okay, so moving on to the together problems. So we've got this one that's pretty straightforward. It gives us the numbers. We don't have to use the grid to find them. So the area of the rectangle is going to be length times width. My length is 15 and my width is 7. And remember, on geometry you can use your calculator, so I'm going to pull up mine. 15 times 7 equals 105. So the area of the rectangle is 105 yards this time, because it tells us. And then we've got the area of the parallelogram. Remember, the parallelogram is base times height. The height is 5, the base is 15, same as this one. So 15 times 5, which equals 75. And then I add those together. 75 plus 105, which equals 180 yards squared. Okay, so moving on to the second one. This one we get to split up into two different shapes because there's no formula for this figure. So I'm going to split it right here and make a triangle and a square. Okay, so the area of the square is the side squared. So I've got 4 squared, which equals 16. The area of the triangle is half of the base times the height. So this is the height right here. And this whole thing is 8. This part's 4, which means that this part is also 4. And then this is going to be 4 as well. So half of the base, half of 4 would be 2, and 2 times 4 equals 8. So I've got 16 plus 8, which equals 24 centimeters squared. All right, so go ahead and give those 2 pause and tries. There's one where you have to use the grid to count how many you have for the base and the heights, and then this one gives it to you, but you're gonna have to do a trapezoid or 3. So you choose, do it however you like, but we'll talk about it tomorrow in class.